13 sinister and spine-chilling scary stories unearthed from the haunted middle of nowhere. The town of Eldridge wrapped itself in an eerie shroud. Once a haven, it now stood as a ghost town filled with whispers of sorrow, shadows dancing through the cracks of gnarled wooden homes. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her two children squabbling in the back seat, oblivious to the sinister charm of their new home. They had left their old life behind, seeking a fresh start, but the air felt heavy, as though the very ground beneath them held its breath. Her new house, a crumbling relic, welcomed them like an ominous grin. The paint peeled like old skin, and the floors creaked underfoot, each sound echoing with a hollow loneliness. "It's cozy," she forced a smile, masking her unease. But deep down, a cold chill ran through her as if she could feel the house as dormant secrets shifting in the shadows. At night, the silence clawed at her sanity, a stillness so sharp it was deafening. Laughter, soft and childlike, prickled her skin. Every window watched her as she bustled about in their new life, like eyes peeking from behind drapes, offering a false sense of comfort. It was a charm that twisted when she discovered the tales lurking beneath Eldridge's surface, children who vanished, swallowed by the haunting deep of forgotten memories. She couldn't shake the dread that pumped through her veins, and then the doors started to slam. After long shifts at the diner, Sarah returned home to find her children shaking, their faces drawn in fear. "Mommy, we heard someone," they cried, their eyes wide as saucers. She brushed it off, exhaustion clouding her judgment. But when she tucked them in later, the darkness embraced her like a shroud, whispers crawling from the walls, promising tenderness and terror all at once. One night, after a grueling shift, her phone rang. A stranger's voice slithered through the receiver, smooth, unctuous. "I know your children need help, Sarah," the voice said, sending a wave of unease rippling down her spine. "You're not alone here. I'm a friend." Panic bubbled at the back of her throat, refusing to let her swallow it down. "Who are you?" she asked, trepidation twisting her gut. "Someone who understands Eldridge." But how could she trust someone she didn't know? The very fabric of this town felt frayed like thin ice, ready to crack beneath her feet. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The realization struck her hard. Every friendly face in the diner suddenly twisted into something sinister as she pieced together their words with the folklore that echoed in Eldridge. Shadows crept closer, whispering secrets of betrayal from decades past, spiraling into the depths of fear. The townsfolk seemed complicit in the darkness, eyes glinting with something unnameable every time they subtly inquired about her children. Her heart raced the night a storm rolled in, thunder rumbling like a beast awakening from its slumber. Alone in the house, her children heard the soft voice beckoning them, muffled giggles creeping up the stairway, growing sinister as they called their names. Panic washed over Sarah like ice water as she rushed through eerily empty streets, hoping against hope she wasn't too late. As she approached her home, the town felt alive, like it was watching her every step. Their smiles stretched too thin as the night deepened. Void of trust, she ran on instinct, realizing she may have walked into a trap far darker than she could ever foresee. Would she make it back in time to save her children before the darkness consumed them? Whole? In that moment, with dread tightening around her heart, she knew that no refuge might exist in this town filled with secrets and spine-chilling horrors. The wind howled through the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky like pleading hands. Sarah bolted through the door, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Every instinct screamed for her to move faster, to find her children before they became another whisper lost to the night. The house stood before her, a looming dark figure, each creak and groan reverberating with a life of its own. "Ella! Jake!" she shouted, her voice barely rising above the storm that raged outside. Desperation clawed at her throat as she burst through the door, heart pounding. The air felt thick, electric, as if the house was holding its breath along with her. "Mom!" A small voice echoed from upstairs, high and scared, but unmistakably her daughter's. Relief surged through her, but it was quickly swallowed by dread. "Stay where you are!" She dashed up the staircase, nearly tripping over a loose floorboard, the sound echoing ominously. The wind whipped around her, rattling the windows like frantic hands trying to escape. Reaching the top, she saw the door to their bedroom slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning her closer. "Please help!" The voice trembled again, the soft weeping filling her with a sense of impending doom. She threw open the door, and the sight sent her heart plummeting. Jake stood in the corner, his small frame trembling like a leaf in the wind. Ella, however, was nowhere to be seen. "What is going on? Where is your sister?" Sarah pressed, struggling to maintain her composure. Jake's wide eyes blinked up at her, filled with fear and something else, something that made her skin crawl. "She went with a lady, Mom," Jake stammered, pointing toward the closet. I tried to stop her, but before he could finish, a cold rush of air swept past Sarah, the temperature dropping abruptly. She turned to see the closet door swinging open, and inky darkness spilling out. A voice, soft and luring, drifted through the silence, sweet like honey but sharp like a knife. "Ella, come and play." "Get behind me!" Sarah yelled, the panic flaring into pure instinct as she shielded Jake from the encroaching shadows. The atmosphere crackled with energy, and Sarah felt an unseen force attempting to pry them apart. "Mommy," Jake whimpered, pressing against her leg as tears streamed down his cheeks. She could feel her resolve wafting away like smoke in the wind, replaced by an overwhelming fear. "Not today!" Sarah shouted, a surprising fire igniting within. She lunged toward the closet, determined to fight whatever darkness awaited. But as she approached, something cold wrapped around her ankle like a vice, pulling her back with relentless force. With a gasp, she stumbled, falling to one knee as terror gripped her heart. "Help! Ella!" she screamed, trying to catch a glimpse of her daughter, but the shadows thickened, distorting her vision. Then, from beyond the darkened maw of the closet, a fleeting shape flickered in, and out of sight a small figure, her daughter, laughing. "Mommy, she has so much fun. Come on." "No! Ella!" Sarah's voice cracked as dread filled her. Each heartbeat echoed against the wall of silence that surrounded them, the warning bells of instinct ringing louder than ever. As the darkness closed in, she strained against it, feeling a surge of maternal power amidst the paralyzing terror. Everything in her screamed to save her child, but a sickening realization pierced through her, chilling her to the bone. The lady wasn't just in the closet. She was part of Eldridge, part of the very air they breathed. With every ounce of strength, she clawed forward, breaking free from the grip binding her. Determination drove her back to the closet, the warmth of Jake behind her reminding her why she fought. But was that enough? "Ella!" she cried, reaching desperately. Just then, the shadows thickened, an almost tangible ripple of darkness pulling at her sanity. The last thing she heard was the soft giggle of her daughter, fading into the dark as Sarah's world turned to chaos. Would they escape this nightmare, or would they join the town's cursed history? Darkness engulfed Sarah as she fought against the creeping shadows. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, yet every ounce of her being melded into one resolute force. She had to pull Ella back from the brink. The laughter echoed, mocking her, sending chills down her spine, igniting a flicker of rage against whatever sinister force held her daughter captive. Ella! She screamed again, her voice a raw, desperate plea against the storm of otherworldly whispers. The air grew denser with each second, pressing upon her chest like a weight she could hardly bear. "Mommy!" The sound of her daughter's voice flared in sudden urgency, yanking at Sarah's heart. It enveloped her, promising something just beyond reach, but that promise came with a price. With a final burst of adrenaline, she thrust her hand into the dark. Tendrils of shadow grasped at her wrist, winding tighter, as if testing her commitment. As she felt the cold caress wrap around her forearm, her breath caught. The warmth of Jake at her back gave her strength, reminding her she wasn't alone in this battle. "Hold on to me, Jake," she shouted, using all her might to pull against the clutches of the void. "Hold on." She tore her gaze from the darkness, willing to focus on her son rather than on the terror that surrounded them. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if sensing the threat posed by their unwavering bond. But the moment of respite was short-lived. From the looming depths of the closet, a silhouette emerged, icy tendrils coiling around a figure that resembled her daughter. Ella's features twisted into a grotesque smile. "Mommy! Come and play!" Ella's voice was eerily sweet, laced with a hollowed tone that clawed at Sarah's heart. "Ella, no! That's not you!" Sarah shouted, feeling the pull of an invisible thread binding her daughter to the dark entity behind her. The figure chuckled, and the sound reverberated through the room like a funeral dirge, chilling her blood. Jake whimpered, his small body shivering in fright. "Make it go away, Mommy. I don't like her. She's not Ella." The entity's gaze flicked toward Jake, interest piqued. Tendrils of darkness curled like fingers towards him, the air tinged with unholy intentions. "You can join us too, little boy," it cooed, voice slithering like velvet poisoned with venom. "No! Stay behind me!" Sarah exclaimed, sensing Jake's panic overtaking him as he shrank closer. Determination surged within her as she glared into the abyss, fueled by a desperate maternal instinct. Summoning her every ounce of courage, Sarah shifted her focus back to the essence of who she knew Ella truly to be. "Ella, my beautiful girl. You have to fight." She felt the warmth of hope whirl within her, despite the dread gnawing at her mind. She threw the grip of the shadows off, using her body as a shield for her son. In that moment of pure clarity, Ella's laughter faltered, cutting through the veil of darkness like a knife. "Mommy?" It was faint, just a whisper, yet it reverberated with her daughter's familiar essence. Sarah threw herself deeper into the inky depths, hands outreached, heart racing. "I'm here. I'm coming to get you." The darkness rippled violently, twisting as if agitated by her refusal to succumb. The shadows thrashed around her like wild animals, clawing, attempting to pull her back, but Sarah surged on. Then, a blinding flash erupted from the closet, the shadows recoiling as if struck. "You think you can take them?" A voice thundered, a harsh wind carrying the echoes through the room. "Mommy!" Jake screeched in terror as the turbulence thrown by that loud voice knocked him backward. Sarah lunged toward the flickering light, hoping it would reveal the way to her daughter. But just then, the light flickered, and the darkness roared, drowning it out. "Don't you dare take us!" "Ella, please!" But would her plea echo in the depths of despair, or would it be swallowed into oblivion? Enduring that haunting silence, Sarah felt time stretch. Was it the end or the beginning of their nightmare? "Mommy!" The voice tailed off to nothingness, drawing Sarah into the abyss. Further still. What remained against the dark now hovered like a threat, ready to strike. The truth awaited her, but at what cost? The darkness felt alive, pulsating with malevolence as Sarah's heart raced. Each beat echoed against the oppressive silence, a rhythm of panic mingled with a sliver of determination. She pressed forward, gripping Jake's hand tightly, half dragging him through the thick blackness that clawed at her. She had to reach Ella, had to pull her out of this abyss before it swallowed them all. "Stay close," she urged, the tremor in her voice betraying the calm she desperately sought to maintain. Every moment felt stretched, as if the shadows were deliberately playing with their time, mocking her urgency. Suddenly, a sharp whisper slithered through the air. Sarah, it sounded like her name, but twisted, the voice dripped with malice, echoing off the walls. She turned her head, the faint flicker of the light still fighting to be seen. But the shadows shifted, almost fluidly, and before she could process that creeping movement, the figure before her began to take form again in all too familiar outline. "Mommy," the voice sang, mocking her. This wasn't Ella, not now. This was a simulation, a cruel taunt. The entity's eyes glowed faintly, its smile wide and unnatural, teeth glinting in the darkness. "You'll miss the games, get away from her!" Sarah screamed, fury igniting her spirit as she reached for the light again, desperation bubbling up from her very core. The light erupted, hot and blinding, illuminating everything around them. For a moment, Sarah felt hope surge. Ella stood there, almost ghostly, flickering at the edges as if wavering between worlds. But just as quickly, the shadows wrapped tighter around her, suffocating that warm glow, dragging it back into pitch blackness. "No!" Jake screamed, a shriek that sliced through her soul. "No! Please, no!" Sarah growled, shoulders trembling under the weight of impending loss. She pushed against the pull of the dark, where the laughter beckoned like a siren's song, irresistible and seductive. But then, something shifted. The laughter morphed into cries, overlapping sounds that blended panic with anguish. "Mommy! Don't leave me! Ella!" she shrieked, finding herself more frantic than she ever imagined possible. The entity's hold slackened momentarily, whispers fading into the distance. She seized the chance, focusing entirely on her daughter's voice. "Fight! Fight back, baby!" Sarah felt something wane. The shadows were not just darkness. They were a twisted force, a web of memories and fear. "Ella! Remember your room? Remember the stars we painted together?" A stutter of light flickered on the edges of her voice, hope crackling like electricity in her veins. But the shadows thickened again, creeping forward, hungry and alive. The tears that formed in her eyes caught the pulsing light, casting trembling shadows that danced like phantoms. "Lies!" the entity hissed. And then it lunged. Darkness surged forward, enveloping her, each tendril cold as death, wrapping around her limbs, binding her to despair. Sarah's breath faltered as panic surged. This creature, this thing, meant to take both her and Ella. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted, this time from Jake. A sound so visceral, so raw, that it clawed at Sarah's heart, urging her to overcome the enveloping darkness. "Jake, stay behind me," she shouted, her voice seeping through the night like a desperate beacon. But she couldn't turn. She couldn't look away from the void. And then, a flicker of light danced on the cusp of her vision again. Was it a trick? A hallucination? Or was Ella still clinging to the remnants of who she once was? The shadows writhed angrily, but the warmth of hope ignited within Sarah once more. As she fought against the cold, she heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter, not twisted this time, but bright and innocent. "Mommy! I'm trying!" Ella's voice rang clearer now, cutting through the haze. Was this their chance? Could that call anchor them back? But the shadows writhed and screamed, each lash striking her skin, as if sensing the threat. "No!" the creature bellowed, its fury piercing through the whirlwind of chaos. As Sarah lunged toward the light, she felt the shadows clutch tighter, pain exploding in her chest. She had to succeed. For Ella. For Jake. And then, just when hope waned, blackness swallowed it whole. In the suffocating silence that followed, Sarah felt herself falling into an abyss where even her screams couldn't escape. What awaited her in this void, and would she ever find her daughter, or be lost forever in the dark? Sarah's heart pounded, a dull thud echoing through the void that engulfed her. It felt like an eternity, yet the world beyond her darkness slipped closer with every breath. It was a suffocating vacuum, stealing her desire to scream, leaving only silence, a heavy blanket that pressed down on her chest. Was this what death felt like? This stillness, this overwhelming lack of sensation? For a fleeting moment, an unthinkable thought clawed at her mind. What if she had failed? What if Ella was lost, and Jake? She couldn't let herself think of it, not when the weight of despair bore down heavier than ever. Suddenly, a piercing wail cut through the silence. The scream wasn't from the void, but from the remnants of chaos that had surrounded them just moments ago. It was faint but familiar, sending a shiver of recognition coursing through her. Jake. With that single thought, she pushed against the dark, sinking deeper into hopelessness, but feeling a flicker of movement. The pressure that bound her grew slack, like chains crumbling to dust. She seized the moment. Hold on, just hold on. A tingling warmth sparked around her. Mommy? Ella's voice pierced through the shadows once more, a beacon calling her home. Desperate, Sarah clawed through the darkness with all her might. She envisioned her daughter, running through the sunlit garden, laughter spilling like liquid joy. The image lit a fire in her chest, enough to push against the suffocating blackness. I'm coming, Ella. I promise. The shadows swirled, fighting back with fury. A second voice joined the cacophony of screams, twisted and dark, rising like smoke. Why do you resist? She is mine now. She belongs to the darkness. No! Sarah shouted, every ounce of her will focus on pushing through the remnants of despair. Ella, please! Fight! Remember who you are? Sensing Ella's essence slipping through the grasp of the malicious force, Sarah fought back with a ferocity that surprised herself. Light flickered within her, igniting memories those nights of story time, their endless games of pretend, their laughter echoing through the halls of their home. Suddenly she felt something. A tether, a string connecting her to Ella. It pulsed, fragile yet unwavering against the shadows that snarled and hissed around her. Mommy! Ella cried, and with that cry, flames of energy burst forth from Sarah, illuminating the choking darkness. The shades howled. The darkness twisted and turned against the radiant warmth, flinching, almost as if fearing the confrontation. Sarah's heart raced. She was disheartened but defiant. They had a chance. But then, another grotesque figure emerged from the shadows, looming tall, stark, and unforgiving. It held a cloak of swirling darkness, an insatiable hunger in its eyes, and its mouth cracked open, revealing razor-sharp teeth. Foolish woman! It shrieked, its voice a hissing serpent. You think you can take her back? You will join her in darkness. Before she could react, night snaked around her arm, engulfing her waist. She gasped as icy fingers grasped at her soul, chilling her resolve. The entity leaned in closer. You're too late. The games have just begun, no. She screamed again, but this time, doubt began to seep in, mingling with her desperation. Could she truly pull Ella back from this abyss? But as the darkness lunged to consume her, she saw the faint glow at the edge of her vision, a shimmer of light that promised hope. Ella! Grab the light. Hold on to the love we built together. The shadows screamed in defiance. Would they win against the darkness that threatened to consume them? Or would they be lost to a fate worse than death? With her heart racing, Sarah's determination surged as she lunged toward that flickering glow, ready to confront whatever horror awaited them. Sarah's heart stopped just long enough for fear to creep inside her. The swirling darkness pulsated, echoing the swift rhythm of her breath. The grotesque figure loomed above, those eyes burning like coals. She could sense its hunger seeping into her resolve, wrapping around her like a suffocating net. But the light, it flickered ever so slightly, urging her, calling to her like an old friend. She had to get there. She had to reach her daughter. Clenching her fists, Sarah began dragging against the icy grip, still locked around her waist. It felt like moving through molasses, slow and torturous, but she wouldn't yield. "Ella!" she screamed. "Stay with me. I'm right here." The shadows lashed out, hurling whispers that crawled over her skin, coiling around her throat. "The more you fight, the more pain awaits you," they hissed. Their rasping voices filled her mind like thunder, causing echoes of despair to blossom within. And then it happened. A surge of warmth surged through her, igniting her will. She was a mother. She was fierce. She would not lose her daughter to this entity. "Stop it!" she roared, pulling harder against the shadows, pushing away unspeakable dread. The dark monstrosity recoiled, thin tendrils withdrawing a fraction as if her defiance shocked it. There it was again, the glimmer, a beacon dancing in the distance. Sarah locked onto it, fixed her gaze with fierce intensity, and for a brief moment she could almost hear Ella's laughter intertwining with the warm glow. "Mommy, the light!" Ella's voice emerged stronger, more clear, like a melody cutting through the storm. With renewed vigor, Sarah lunged. The darkness hissed violently, its shrieks clawing at the tender spots of hope she dared to cling to. "You cannot outrun despair," it roared back, its head tilting at an unnatural angle, eyes blazing with pure venom. But Sarah's body burned with memories of Ella's hugs and smiles. The warmth spread through her limbs, as if she were rediscovering sunlight after an endless winter. "Ella! Hold on! I'm coming!" she shouted, a frantic battle cry that filled the void. Gravity shifted. With every ounce of will, she surged toward that glowing warmth. The shadows shrieked as they recoiled, and suddenly the entity lunged forward, willing to crush her hope. The cold tendrils ripped at her skin, and she felt something snap within her. But she kept going. Nothing would stop her. In a dizzying blur, she collided with the light. The warmth enveloped her like a blanket, melting away the chilling darkness. She felt Ella's presence merging with her, their bond intensifying in the embrace of that glow. But before she could pivot toward victory, a tremulous roar erupted from the inky depths. The voice of the entity rang louder than ever, shaking the very air around her. "Fools! You dared to strengthen the bond. Now you will both pay the price." In an instant, the light flickered volatilely, casting shadows that expanded and contracted with terrifying speed, as if devouring everything in their path. A pulse echoed through Sarah's body, an impending doom binding them both tightly. "Mommy! Help!" Ella's cry echoed just as the darkness surged, swallowing them whole once more. They spun, lost, unmoored in a churning abyss of despair. Sarah struggled, catching glimpses of the light dissolving between shadows. It flickered, fighting against a tidal wave that threatened to drown them. Would it be enough? Would they ever escape this terror together? The darkness twisted tighter, fraying her resolve once more. And then, without warning, everything went black. What emerged next would be a nightmare of choices. Would love be enough to shatter the darkness? Or would it lead them deeper into horror? Everything was quiet. Unnervingly quiet. Sarah blinked, trying to adjust to the utter void where moments ago so much had been at stake. The darkness felt thick, like a fog, and yet it throbbed with an unnatural pulse. An instinctual dread coiled in her gut as she searched for Ella. "Ella?" Her voice trembled, echoing embarrassingly against the impenetrable black. "Can you hear me?" No response. Just silence. Panic tightened its grip around her heart. She forced herself to breathe, in and out, trying to shake off the overwhelming dread that spread like ice through her veins. Where had the light gone? Was she truly alone? Suddenly, flickers of emotion ruptured through the quiet screams, haunting whispers, and laughter twisted into something grotesque. They exploded like fireworks in her mind, distorting her thoughts and stealing her breath. "Mommy, help me!" A familiar cry split through the chaos, but it was warped and broken. Sarah felt the tug of her heart fracture into a million pieces as despair wrapped around her, freezing her in place. "Ella! I'm coming!" she shouted. Her voice was swallowed immediately, leaving her feeling small and powerless. The dark shadows pulsed once again, sinister and unrelenting. They slithered closer, exuding a coldness that felt suffocating against her skin. "Wretched mother, do you think your love can pierce the darkness?" the entity hissed, each word dripping with malice. "You've played the game long enough." "We'll see about that," Sarah spat, her heart racing. She could not afford to give in now. She focused on the sound of Ella's voice. It fueled her resolve. With each step she took, the shadows convulsed, dancing in malevolent delight. Whispers wove around her, forming knots that tugged at her mind as if seeking to unravel her sanity. "Losing hope is only the beginning," they taunted, their voices a cacophony ringing twisted joy. But amidst the chaos, a brighter note emerged from the tangled web. "Mommy! Find me!" Ella's voice echoed again, clearer this time, woven with an insistent urgency. It sparked a flicker of light deep within Sarah's soul, igniting a fight within her. "I will find you, Ella!" she shouted defiantly, propelled forward by that unwavering love. The shadows thrashed around her, howling like starving beasts denied their feast. "Foolish girl, you strengthen your bond with every shout. But we shall fray it until it snaps." The entity screeched, the darkness rising like a tidal wave. Tendrils shot toward her, ready to drag her back into the abyss. With sheer will, Sarah pushed through, every ounce of desire to reach Ella coursing through her veins. She was a mother on a mission. No horror could swindle her hope away. Just as she felt the grip of shadows almost consume her, a flicker of warmth emerged from the blackness, a real light this time, piercing and unwavering. The tide of darkness rolled back momentarily, revealing a narrow path. "Ella!" she called once more, darting toward it. She stumbled, grasping for anything solid as the shadows lashed out, desperate to pull her back. But she wouldn't let it happen. "Not now. Grab my hand," she shouted into the shadows that stretched and curled around her, fear pooling in her chest. Then, a soft glow caught her eye. There was a figure at the end of the path, small, vulnerable, yet undeniably radiant. "Mommy, don't leave me." Ella's voice was filled with fear, but threaded with courage. Sarah lunged, feeling energy surge through her limbs. She couldn't stop now. But before she could reach her daughter, the shadows reformed, ready to strike back harder than before. In that moment of dread, everything shifted. The light dimmed, and the figure of Ella began to flicker as if time wavered. Panic found its way back to Sarah's heart, and she screamed, "Ella!" The entity roared with delight. "The game continues, mothers and daughters. The questions will unravel, but the answers that's where the horror truly lies." Was this a new chapter, or a deeper descent into despair? As the darkness bristled around Sarah, tantalizing and ominous, it finally dawned on her. To find Ella, she would have to confront more than just fear. She had to face truths that had been buried in shadows for far too long, and the true horror was just beginning. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as shadows lashed out, intent on pulling her away from the narrow path. The familiar warmth of hope flickered like a candle in a storm, pushing her forward. Each step she took felt like a battle, the shadows howling, clawing at her sanity, ripping at her determination. "Ella!" The call was a raw ache in her throat. She was desperate now, the fear morphing into something primal, an instinct to protect, to fight against an unseen enemy. In moments of madness, the whispers surged again, creeping into her mind. "Why did you let her come here?" They cooed, mocking her as though they were tiny shadows themselves. sneering from the corners of the void. Her fate was sealed the moment you walked away. No. I won't accept that. Sarah growled, gritting her teeth as she pressed on. Just ahead, the glow that was Ella flickered more prominently, almost as if it resonated with Sarah's frantic energy. The shadows recoiled, perhaps sensing the Mother South's relentless drive. "Mommy!" Ella's voice was a lifeline. It tethered Sarah to her, sparking a surge of courage. The flickering light began to stabilize, like a torch finding solid ground amidst the chaos. But just as she reached out, Ella's figure trembled violently. "Help me! It hurts!" There was desperation in her words, pain that sliced through Sarah's soul like a knife. The shadows pulsed, feeding on her hesitation. "Hold on, baby. I'm almost there." The words sprang from Sarah's lips, fueled by fear but propelled by love. She could hear the shadows laughing, mocking her inadequacy. They clawed at the walls of her mind, digging deep, searching for the doubt they could exploit. With each step toward her daughter, memories flooded Sarah's mind, faded images of Ella's laughter, her first steps, the moments of joy that painted their life together. The thick darkness seemed to swirl tighter, ever eager to drown those memories in despair. "No! Not like this!" she shouted, rage igniting her resolve. She couldn't let the darkness take that away from her. As she merged with the light surrounding Ella, the shadows began to waver, as if struck by her fierce defiance. "Ella, take my hand." "Now!" Sarah urged, reaching out with all the strength she could muster. But a figure emerged from the dark, a looming presence, a malignant essence, formed from hatred and despair. "Foolish mother, only one may walk away. Do you think you can just pluck her from my grasp?" It hissed, its voice a discordant symphony of pain and laughter. Suddenly, the pathway split, one side shrouded in bone-chilling darkness, the other illuminated by a soft, warm glow. Sarah could feel the pull of both sides, grappling at her heart like two beasts in a deadly struggle for dominance. She hesitated, panic clawing at her throat. "I want to choose. I want to." Did she really have to decide between their safety? The fear twisted inside her, a tempest brewing. As if sensing her turmoil, the entity shrieked, its shadowy tendrils snatching at her, whispers spiraling into a chaotic crescendo. "Dare to choose, and you shall lose everything. Her life or your sanity. The question remains." The choice weighed heavily, choking the air from her lungs. In the whirlwind of shadows, the glimmer of Ella grew more assertive. "Mommy, take me!" Ella cried out, clutching her tiny hands, straining towards Sarah. The shadows seemed to recoil, threatening to crush the light, to snuff out hope entirely. But Sarah's love was like fire, igniting her very core. "I choose you, Ella. Always!" In that moment, the entity surged. Darkness roared as it breached the threshold of their bond, ready to unravel everything they had fought for. With a final push, Sarah lunged for her daughter, dodging the claws of despair. But just before their hands could connect, the visions of the past rushed through Sarah's mind, haunting images of sacrifices made, all driven by doubt. Just as their fingers brushed, the shadows writhed like a tempest, fusing into an overwhelming wave of darkness. A bone-chilling laughter echoed through the void, drowning out Ella's desperate cries. And just like that, the light flickered again. Nothing was certain anymore. Would Sarah's choice condemn them both, or save them from this nightmare? Caught in the heart of the tempest, Sarah stood braced for what would come next. Because the truth lurked just beneath, ready to strike with brutal force. What had she truly unleashed? The darkness pinched Sarah's senses, gripping her so tightly it felt like a vice around her throat. She could no longer tell where the shadows ended and her thoughts began. The luminous glow of Ella's light pulsed, a fragile heartbeat in the maw of despair. Panic clawed at her, gnawing at the edges of her sanity. "I have to get to her," she whispered through clenched teeth, But as she pushed forward, the ground turned wobbly beneath her feet, shifting like quicksand. The shadows writhed around her ankles, trying to tether her to this misery, droning in a twisted lullaby. Let go. Give in. There's no way out, they urged, seeking to drown her in cold emptiness. Stop it, she shouted, but it came out as a hoarse whisper, filled with fear. Her arms reached outward, desperately anticipating that electric connection with Ella. Her heart raced, matching the frenetic pace of her thoughts. I won't let you take her. The entity lurked close, a black mass swelling with malicious intent, its laughter harsh and metallic, echoing in the void. To claim her, you must first abandon hope, it hissed, and tendrils of darkness slithered around Sarah, constricting her spirit. In a desperate bid, Sarah referred to her memories, visions of Ella when she was still small, her laughter tinged with innocence. Remember our picnic? Those sunsets? She was bargaining with herself, praying hard against the storm. Remember, but the shadows tightened, distorting the recollections into mocking images of laughter turning to screams, sunlight drowning in blood. Suddenly, the darkness shifted, and a new sound punctured the cacophony, a low, rhythmic thrum, the chant of a distant heartbeat. It was steady, almost welcoming, a pulse in stark contrast to the chaos. Sarah, the sound was faint, but it resonated like a drum in her chest. There, in the eye of the maelstrom, a shadowy path began to form, separating from the chaos, revealing fragments of a world she almost recognized. Ella! I'm coming! It became her mantra, fueling her strength, emboldening her resolve. She seized hold of the light emanating from her daughter, wrapping her hands around the glow, willing it to guide her through the dark. The chanting grew louder, weaving a melody that entwined itself around the shadows, holding them at bay. It was familiar yet alien, as though a forgotten memory brushed against her consciousness. Yet doubt gnawed at her mind. What if it was a trick? What if the light led to another trap? Shaking her head, Sarah fought the creeping questions. I can't doubt now. And with renewed determination, she stepped toward the shimmering light as the path stretched out for her. But as she approached, Ella's voice quivered on the edge of desperation. Mommy, help me. I can't hold on much longer. The shadows coiled tighter around Ella, and Sarah felt her stomach twist painfully. Time slowed to a crawl. No! I'm right here. But her movements dragged, each step a monumental effort, as if the earth itself tried to reclaim her. She could see the shadows clawing at Ella, tugging her deep into the darkness. Sarah screamed, a raw primal call that shattered the still air. Please! I need you. Her heart surged, as the flicker of hope transformed to roaring fire within her. But just as she stretched out her hand toward Ella, the darkness collapsed inwards. The walls of despair echoed with sinister laughter, vibrating through her bones. You cannot have her, you cannot save her. Then, a strange thing happened. The shadows shuddered, halting their advance, drawn back like a tide. Conflicted glances slid through the murky darkness, almost uncertain. Could it be? Maybe her fight was in vain? Sarah's heart raced. Was this the flicker of a chance? Was the darkness losing its grip on Ella? The chant pulsed through her veins. A flicker of insight broke free. No hope, no fear, no choice. It whispered like a breeze through her hair. But as she felt the surge of possibility ripple through her, she also sensed something more profound, lurking beneath the surface. A deep, unrelenting dread clawing at her consciousness. What are they hiding? She pondered, her heart pounding louder, as she realized the shadows were more than just a trap. They were guardians of a darker secret, something unfathomable that stirred restlessly, waiting. As the laughter faded into a chilling silence and the darkness pulsed around her, Sarah was left on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. Could she truly save Ella, or had she just stumbled into a far more sinister game? Could she escape the clutches of both shadows and truth? The echoes of despair clung to the air, wrapping around Sarah like a suffocating blanket. The shadows recoiled for a fleeting moment, but the darkness still roared with a fury, twisting into angry shapes that threatened to consume everything. "Ella!" Sarah shouted, her heart pounding like a drum. Each scream ignited her spirit, fueled by determination and sheer terror. She could sense her daughter straining against the cold tendrils that sought to pull her into oblivion. "Mommy, I don't want to go." Ella's voice was a fragile thread in a storm, and it made Sarah's heart clench painfully. In that moment, she felt the full weight of a mother's love, the willingness to leap into the dark for her child, to confront whatever horror lay ahead. The shadows hissed around her, taunting her with promises of despair. "You will never reach her," they jeered, but desperation fueled her. The flickering light grew more intense, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. And then, Sarah saw it, a pathway lit with warmth, stretching out between her and Ella, illuminated by their bond. "Ella! This way!" she cried, bursting toward the glow. The shadows thrashed violently, trying to ensnare her with their venomous whispers. But she pushed forward with everything she had, tearing through the darkness. "Mommy!" Ella's urgent call broke through the continuous roar, igniting something fierce within Sarah. "Don't leave me. I'm scared. Hold on, baby. I'm coming." Sarah's voice rang out, grounded in determination. She felt Ella's spirit reaching for her through the chaos, and for the first time, it felt like the shadows were losing their power. As she moved, the shadows began to thin like smoke fading into light. The horrible entity that had held them captive shifted, its malevolence flickering as if unsure of how to react. "You think you can save her?" it growled, snarling its regret. "You cannot win." But Sarah wouldn't be deterred. She pressed on, feeling the warmth of familiarity and love gathering strength. Memories of laughter, soft hugs, and whispered bedtime stories flared in her mind, wrapping her in a cocoon of resilience. She could almost taste the sweetness of the past. "Ella! Just a little bit further!" she yelled, feeling the pull to the light growing stronger, urging her to press on. She could feel Jake's presence, the warmth of both her children igniting something fierce, a ferocious love, a fierce need to protect. They were both waiting for her, perched on the edge of fear and hope. "Mommy, please!" Ella shrieked one last time, and Sarah shot forward. In that heartbeat, their fingers touched, a delicate connection that sent a shock of energy surging through them both. The shadows recoiled, hissing in outrage. But they had made it. Their bond was a force, a shield against the darkness. Then, the world exploded in light, bright as 1,000 suns. Warmth pulsed through Sarah, lifting her from the inky depths. She couldn't tell where the light ended, and she began. Both were one now in that beautiful, euphoric moment. As the shadows withered and twisted, willing to lose their grip, a relieved cry pierced the air. "Mommy! We did it!" "Yes, Ella. We're together." Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face, relief washing over her like a tidal wave. The quiet rustling of the shadows hushed, dissipating into whispers lost in the breeze. But as the light settled, they landed back on solid ground, a place that felt familiar yet strange. The remnants of darkness hung in the air, though now they felt like a distant nightmare. They had conquered it together. The town of Eldridge stood before them. Its eerie stillness was broken by the laughter of children playing outside. But this time, it was a haven, each shadow a friendly reminder of their bravery, and they could finally breathe. "Look, Mommy!" The playground. Ella squealed, and she bolted toward the colorful structure, Jake hot on her heels, laughter spilling like sunlight. The echoes of the past were stripped away, replaced by the joyous chirps of children, ringing clear as day. Sarah watched them, her heart swelled with overwhelming gratitude. They weren't just free, They were whole. The trials they faced had carved them deeper than before, stitching them together in a way that only those who fought against darkness could understand. With each giggle and shout from her children, Sarah silently vowed to remember this day, the light and laughter, the connection that demonstrated true strength. They would be all right together. Finally, as she turned to walk alongside them, the air felt lighter, the shadows subsided. She would always carry the memory of Eldridge with her, a bittersweet reminder that darkness lurked still, but they could face it without fear, because their love outshone any shadow. And just like that, the haunted whispers of Eldridge transformed into distant echoes, replaced by the light of possibilities yet to come. Let us take these lessons to heart. Remember, love conquers fear, and no darkness can withstand the bond of family. Believe in the light within you, and don't forget to share those stories with others. Help them find their glow. Now, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.